Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope that all of you are doing well, and I hope that all of you are doing great. So let's get started without any delay. So before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Deepak. I have 15 plus years of experience in the same domain. Okay, guys. Now let's just take a look at today's agenda, what we will talk about. Today we will talk about why Azure SQL. Then we will talk about what is Azure SQL, like what is the importance of it and why we should have it. At the same time, what exactly is Azure? Like what is the importance of Azure? You must have heard a lot of the things about Azure. So what exactly is the importance of Azure? What is the benefit that we get? So all such kind of discussion, all such kind of things, we are going to talk about it in detail. And then post that, we will talk about Azure SQL architecture. What exactly is the architecture of Azure SQL? What exactly, is the importance of it, how exactly it looks like, how exactly it works. So all such kind of things we are going to talk about in detail. Then we'll talk about model and service tiers. Then we will talk about Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Managed Instance, and SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine. So that's something that we are going to cover in today's class. Now talking about how exactly it's going to look like. Talking about, what exactly is going to be the journey once you're going to take the course from us. So if you're going to take a course from us in the very first class, you're going to learn about introduction to Microsoft Azure Solution Architect training. What exactly is the Azure Solution Architect, its services, core components of the practical hands-on. In the second class, you will learn about Azure Virtual Machine and networking. What exactly is Azure Virtual Machine? What exactly is the, different type of virtual machine you can create, different networkings. Like one of the biggest myths that people have, specifically in the case of Azure, that since this is the cloud platform, you cannot have your custom networks. That eventually is not true. You can have your custom networks as many as you want. So let's say if I want to have, let's say, 20 virtual networks, 30 virtual networks. So as many as virtual networks I want, I can have it in this case. That's one of the biggest benefit that you get in the case of Azure. At the same time, if you want to create your public network, private network, all such kind of things, you are going to have benefits, and that's something you are going to learn end to end with the practical hands-on. Then in the third class, you are going to learn about Azure VMSS, which is Virtual Machine Scale Set. What exactly is Azure VMSS? What exactly is Virtual Machine Scale Set? What exactly it is? So, what are different availability zones? And how exactly it works, like with the practical hands-on. Next one that you're going to have is Azure App Services, its features. What exactly, what are different type of app services you have? Logic application, function applications. There are platform as a service, without having any kind of a platform. What are the different one you have? All such things you're going to have it with a practical hands-on. In the fifth class, you will learn about Azure Hybrid Connectivity and Site Recovery, what that means. What are the different core components of it, all such kind of things with a practical hands-on. In the sixth class, you will learn about Azure Storage Solution, design patterns, what are different types of storage solutions you have. If I talk about storage, there are 4 different types of storage: blob, file, queue, table, with the practical hands-on. Then you are going to have Azure Kubernetes Service. What are different types of Kubernetes service you have with the practical hands-on. Then you are going to have Azure Active Directory and role-based access control with the practical hands-on. In the 9th class, we are going to have Azure Monitoring Insight Services with the practical hands-on. In the last class, you're going to learn about Azure migration. So like how you're going to plan Azure migration, how exactly, like if you want to migrate from one platform to another, like for example, I want to migrate from on-premise to cloud, or one cloud to another provider, how you can do all such kind of things you're going to learn in this course with the practical hands-on. And at the end, you are going to become a superhero having a cape like this. Now talking about why Azure SQL. Now before that, let's just take a step back. Let's just understand, why Azure. Now, what is exactly Azure? Azure is, a cloud service which is provided by Microsoft. Now, there are different cloud providers as well that we have there in the market. Like for example, from Google, we have GCP. With Amazon, we have AWS. Likewise, with Microsoft, we have Azure. So Azure is a cloud computing service which is given by Microsoft. Now, why Azure SQL? Like, what is the need? Like, why we need Azure SQL? Now, guys, if I ask you, you have to create any kind of database instance, what exactly you're going to do? In order to create a database instance, you will require the very basic thing, very basic component that you will require for any database is a server. Now, if I will tell you that I have to configure a database, you will first of all require a platform, right? Or let's say it can be your Windows server, or any of the operating system. You will require a dedicated space. Like database is something very crucial, because right now, if I'm starting, think about it. I have an organization of 100 people where I'm going to store their employee records, like their name, their first name, last name, address, phone number, salaries, all such things I'm storing right now. Let's say this company is going to acquire another company where they have 10,000 employees. When they started, they have deployed this on-premise server with, let's say, 8 GB of RAM and let's say 500 GB of hard drive. Now they have acquired a company which is like more than 100 times of this organization. Now, if they have to leverage the same database, what is the basic challenge that they are going to get? They will require more RAM, more storage, right? I mean, at the same time, let's say if they don't have a budget, they have really explored their entire budget to acquire another company. They don't have a budget. Now, what they will do? Because one of the biggest pain point for them is to invest a lot of money on a physical hardware. And let's say if this company got acquired by a third company, then in that case, I mean, whatever the investment that they made, it's just zero, right? Now, this is something, the benefit of Azure SQL, because this is not independent on a platform. This is a platform as service, like wherein you are just going to take a subscription and, manage the instance over there, and you should be good. So like, why is Azure SQL? First of all, is a cost saving. You don't have to, pay specifically for Azure instances, like the way you do on premise. It's not like going to be a payment which is being made. It's made forever. It's just a one-time attempt. Like, you have made it today, and if you don't want to use it tomorrow, you just stop the instance, delete your instances, and you're not going to be billed. It's a kind of a unit of electricity. Whatever the kind of usage you are going to have, you're going to be paid for it. If you're not going to have any kind of usage, then you don't have to pay a lot of bills and all. So that's one of the biggest advantage you get, like where you're going to have bare minimum usage, then you're going to have bare minimum bill as well. That's one of the biggest advantage that you get with the case of Azure SQL. Next is boosted scalability and performance. Now, if you talk about in terms of scalability, if you talk about in terms of performance, it eventually helps you to boost the scalability. It eventually helps you to boost up the performance as well, like where the entire scalability, entire performance can be boosted up. Next is a high security, wherein if you want to make it, like a highly secured environment, highly secure data you want to have, you can have it, because there is a concept of, key vault. So in the key vault, this is again a Microsoft proprietary. At the back end, they are using HSMs, which are tamper proof. If someone will try to physically break into the hardware, then also someone will not be able to take the sensitive data out. That's one of the biggest advantage that you get with the Azure. Now, next one that you're going to have is time is on your side. Like if you want to stop the service, you're not going to be billed. If you want to use the service, if you want to expand the infra, if you want to do a scaling, like for example, if I'm getting a more load, let's say I have an application which allows the user to sign up, and whenever they are going to log in, their credentials are going to be validated from the database. Now, I have deployed database into the production using Azure, and I'm only getting a peak traffic from 12 to 5. Let's say on a normal usage, having 8 GB of RAM is sufficient. But during the peak hours, when I'm getting a traffic from 12 a.m. to 5 p.m., during that time, during that window, or let's say 12 a.m. to 5 p.m., during that just 5-hour window, I require double RAM, because it cannot handle that load. Now, if I will leverage that thing on my on-premise, then in that case, I'm going to purchase that much RAM, right? In the case of Azure, you can do a scaling, auto scaling, which is known as scaling up or scaling down, that you can schedule automatically. So for example, if the load is going to go beyond 90%, instances are going to scale up automatically. And when the load is going to come below, let's say 90%, it's going to scale down. So in other words, when the load is more, RAM is going to be increased from 8 to 16, and when the load is less, RAM is going to be decreased from 16 to 8. So that's kind of flip-flop in terms of scaling, can be scheduled automatically, and you're going to just pay for that 5-hour duration. Isn't that very good? Like, you are just going to pay for that 5-hour duration only. So in other words, you don't have to pay for like that money all the time. You are just going to pay, for 5 hours duration only. Next one is business continuity and disaster recovery, which is known as BCDR. Now, here in this case, you can build another replica. So let's say if your primary site goes down, it will automatically fall to the secondary route. So you can always configure BCDR, which is business continuity and disaster recovery. That is something which is going to be there in your side, and you can, create it, you can configure it the way you want. Now, talking about what is Azure SQL, what exactly it is. Now, if I talk about Azure SQL, Azure SQL basically is your Microsoft proprietary. Like this is a family of managed, secure, and intelligent products that use the SQL Server database engine in the Azure cloud. Now, if I have to show you in terms of architecture, the kind of different models that they have. I don't know what's happening, why it's coming back all the time. Okay. Now, this is an example of Azure SQL. You can see, I mean, you have various choices. Either you can create Azure SQL database where you're going to have a single tier, single node, then you're going to have various elastic pools. Then you're going to have Azure SQL managed instance like this. And then you're going to have SQL Server on Azure virtual machine where you're going to have a cluster of it. Now, in the case of Azure SQL database, like this is not any kind of a dedicated hardware that you require. I mean, this does not require any kind of hardware. You can just build it on your environment and you can use and leverage it depending on your requirement. Now, talking about Azure SQL architecture, how exactly the architecture looks like. Now, in the case of Azure SQL, if I say logically, you have 4 layers: the client layer, service layer, platform layer, and infrastructure layer, like which comprises your Azure SQL architecture. Okay. Now, so here in this case, as you can see towards the right, this is a platform layer, So if I just show you like towards the right, this is your platform layer where you're going to have your SQL Server, SQL Azure Fabric management services. You can do the customization. At the bottom, you're going to have infrastructure layer. Now, your platform layer is going to lie between your service layer and the infrastructure layer, which consists of, like service layer consists of your billing and metering, like whatever the kind of consumption you have done. You can always take a look at the real time. Like, for example, in the credit card, before you get the bill, you can always go back and see that how much consumption you have done, how much money you spend on what all resources. All such kind of things are really doable in the case of Azure as well. Now, if we talk about models and service tiers, like what are different type of models we have in the case of Azure and what are different type of service tiers that Azure provides. Now, taking a look on that, like we have 3 types of model in the case of Azure. The first model is your managed instance, which falls under platform as a service. You're going to have managed instance, you are going to have single database, you're going to have elastic pools. All 3 you are going to have in the case of Azure. Now, in the case of purchasing model, you can have your vCore based purchasing model, you can have DTU, direct transaction unit based purchasing model, or you can have a serverless model. In terms of security, your DTU is, like better as compared to serverless. And in case of service tiers, you have general purpose service tier, business critical, and the hyperscale. Now, if I talk about Azure SQL database, what exactly is Azure SQL database? Before that, like your SQL database is the flagship product of Microsoft in the database area. So this is a general purpose relational database that supports structures like relational data like JSON, special, XML, which is extensible markup language. The Azure platform fully manages every Azure SQL database and guarantees no data loss and a high percentage of data availability. Now, if I talk about some of the key features, like some of the important and useful features, the key features that you have of this are your extensive monitoring capabilities, like you can integrate with Splunk, SIM, SOC tools, Splunk, and all, where you can just be alerted if anything went wrong. So you're going to have all this kind of visibility and transparency. Next one is the availability options, where you can see that, like in how many hours like this resource was up, how many hours it was down. So in other words, you just want to, like track it. You want to keep a real eye, all such kind of things. It's going to be possible. It's going to be doable here. The next one that you are going to have is built-in intelligence. So wherein if you want to like customize something, you want to automate something with the help of a built-in intelligence that they have, it's going to make it, things much more easier for you. So you are going to have all the built-in intelligence being available in this. Next is advanced security and compliance. So where in this case, you can just see that, like in terms of security, if you want to make enhancements and all, you can do it very easily. And last is easy to use tools. So where you can leverage and use the tools very easily. Now, talking about Azure SQL Database Server, guys. So in Azure SQL Database, your server basically is a logical construct that acts as a central administrative point for a collection of databases. At the server level, you can eventually administer login, firewall rules, auditing rules, threat detection policies, and auto failover groups. So all such kind of things are pretty, possible and doable. Now, Azure single database, as the name suggests, this is a single instance, single node. So it basically creates a database in Azure SQL Database with its own set of resources, and it's managed actually via the server. So since this is a single database, so every database, it's isolated and portable, wherein you can have a dynamic scalability. You can add as many as you want. You can have monitoring and alerting. So if you want to have, you can just integrate with the different tools, or if you don't want, you can just customize it as per your requirement as well. You can have security the way you want, like all the securities, everything is going to be there in this case. Now, talking about Azure SQL Database Elastic Pool, guys, Azure SQL Database Elastic Pools are a simple, cost-effective solution for managing and scaling multiple databases that are varying and they are unpredictable usage demands. So, like when you should consider a single database Elastic Pool, as you can see in the screenshot, when the utilization becomes high, like for example, if you see that my utilization is going beyond 90%, then you should have the need of a Elastic Pools. So, this is again same thing explained towards the left. Like for example, if I have 4 databases, you see the spikes, but if I'm going to have 20 databases, my utilization is going to be low and I can manage and customize it as per my requirement. Now talking about Azure SQL Managed Instance. Now, in the case of Azure SQL Managed Instance, this is intelligent, scalable cloud database service, which combines the broadest SQL Server engine compatibility with all the benefits of a fully managed and evergreen platform as a service, which is known as PaaS. Now, if I talk about, in terms of architecture, just to give a little bit more understanding, so that you have a, bit more fair idea about it. So that, you can eventually differentiate like the need, like when you should use it and when you should not. Now, here in this case, your Azure SQL database, you know that it's a SQL managed instance. So you have Microsoft SQL Server, you have virtual machine, which is going to be present on the on-premise server. You have features. So when you want to use all the features of SQL Server, you can use it. You can migrate to Azure, which requires less maintenance overhead. You have 100% compatibility with the SQL Server Enterprise Edition, which provides native virtual network implementation. You can have backup and high availability or the clustering. Now, if you talk about the key features, you have the link servers. So if one node goes down, your data is replicated with the second server. It can come up with the second server. Your data is going to be restored from the second server itself. You have the service brokers. You have a database mail. So if you want to configure SMTP and all, it has an inbuilt mailing service. There is no need to configure a separate dedicated SMTP server. And where if you compare about Azure SQL Database versus Azure SQL MI, in terms of management, that's both have a same management. You can expand the infrastructure for the storage the way you want. You can have a backup, like if you want to, create a backup for the storage and all, you can. You are going to have the availability, like you want to create a clustering and all, you can have the host accessibility and license for the expansion if you require. So these are differences which are a little, important to understand. In terms of recovery model, they both have a different recovery model. Azure supports various types. Now, I'm not going to go in detail, otherwise it's going to be a 1 hour separate discussion. In the terms of geo replication, now in the case of Azure SQL DB, it generally provides, I would say a larger infra site for the replication, where the Azure SQL MI have a less feasibility for the replication. Next one is auto failover groups. You can just create customized different groups the way you like for the failover purpose. You can have auto scaling, you can have automatic tuning. So these are different differences that you have between both of them. And you can choose depending on your requirement. Next one that you're going to have is SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine. So lift and shift using SQL Server workload to the cloud to get the combined performance, security, and analytics of the SQL Server with flexibility and hybrid connectivity of Azure with 100% code compatibility. So when to use SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine, so you should use like for when you want to perform a migration. So in that case, you should use SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine, or if you want to use it for existing SQL Server license, or if you want to save the cost, then in that case you can use it. Now, if I talk about in general, the key updates, like the important key features that you are going to have. So it provides automatic updates. So if you want to schedule the updates, like automatic scheduling that you can do here very easily. You can have automated backups depending on your requirement. You can have the high availability cluster, and you can have the performance as well. Now, here in this case, this is the Azure account. Now, in the case of Azure, if you want to create any kind of resources, the very first thing which basically requires is that you have to have a resource group. Think like that, a container, like a bucket where you can put everything. In the bucket, you want to, dump the entire stuff you can. So here in this case, if I'm going to create a virtual machine, I want to create a virtual network, I want to create a key vault. In other words, all these things are known as the resources. Now, in order to create this, I am going to set it up a resource group. Now, in this case, like I want to secure my virtual machine, I can just, spin up a key vault and I can, secure my virtual machines, everything from there itself. So here in this case, I'm going to create a resource group which requires a subscription. So you're going to create the subscription first, then you're going to create a resource group. Under that resource group, you're going to create a resources like the key vaults, virtual machine, everything which are going to be created under there. And the access of this is going to be there till the time you're going to pay it. So this is again a small demonstration. Likewise, if I want to do a database, you can just simply do a search here, or just do a SQL. You are going to have SQL database here, and here in this case you can create it. However, as you can see, it's asking to create a subscription. Now, in this case, if you're going to create a subscription, then you will be able to create a resource group. So the sequence goes like that, guys. You create a subscription. Under one subscription, you can have multiple resource group, and in every resource group, you are going to have multiple resources like database and everything. All these kind of resources are going to be there. Now that's it, guys. If anyone have any kind of doubt, question, or concerns, feel free to ask. If anyone have any kind of doubts, question, or concerns, guys, feel free to ask. If not, then we can wrap up the session for today. Thank you for your kind words, Frank. If anyone have any kind of doubt, question, or concerns, guys, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can wrap up the session for today. Thank you for joining today's session, guys. Have a great day ahead.